Welcome to Faith in 5, a weekly video devotional designed to discuss practical spiritual concepts in 5 minutes or less. I'm your host, Mark Vandella. So admittedly, I'm not a great gardener, and I'm learning, and I'm still screwing it up. The hardest part for me is pruning. Because see, as I've planted things and I've gotten my hands dirty and I've added water and things start to grow and they've got flowers on them ready to produce fruit, it's so hard for me to cut the parts that have flowers on them. But I've been told by all of my gardening friends, you need to prune, you need to make sure that you have the healthiest plant. And it's so hard for me. I actually compare it to fear of missing out, to FOMO. Because for me, whenever I clip off a branch that looks like it could potentially have a tomato or a cucumber or whatever it is, I feel like I'm missing out. But they've convinced me that if I spend the time pruning and trimming back my plants, I'll have a better yield, which is counterintuitive in my mind, and I really struggle with it. But I think we do the same thing in our faith. See, in John 15, 1 through 3, Jesus says, I am the vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch of me that doesn't bear fruit. And he cuts every branch that is grape bearing, but trims them back so that it will bear even more fruit. So there's two things in our lives, in our faith journey, that we should consider. One is trimming and pruning the things in our lives that don't bear fruit. And I'm not saying something crazy like you can't ever do anything fun. I don't believe that's what God wants from us either. However, there are things in our lives that do prevent us from experiencing all that God has for us. And when we don't pause and think about those, or we don't pause and reflect on those, then we never, ever experience. We don't experience any yield because there's all this stuff in the way. And so there's a number of things that get in the way of, I would say even work potentially gets in the way. I'm not saying to go quit your job, but if we don't properly pay attention to all these things like work, exercise, family, I'm trying to think of hobbies, all of these things that could get in the way, certain relationships could prevent us from experiencing everything that God wants us to experience. And so essentially in this verse, God is saying, look at your life. Jesus says, God trims off the things that don't bear fruit. And there are things in our lives that we do on a pretty regular basis that do not bring us closer to where we want to be, and they don't pour or invest any meaning into our lives. But then the second part of that selection of verses is that Jesus says that God also trims the pieces that are bearing fruit so that they can bear even more. And so this past summer, I was reading a book by Shauna Nyquist where it's called Present Over Perfect, and she admits that she had to get to this place. She was involved in everything, committees and church events and family and all of these really, really cool things that all bore fruit. But she said the problem was she was involved in so many things that because of this idea of FOMO, like I have to prune some things in my life so that I could experience even more. There's one or two things that I really enjoy, that I really get meaning from, and that God is using in my life. And when I say yes to everything, I actually don't have the opportunity to produce or bear as much fruit. That's my problem. It's my problem in the garden, and it's certainly my problem in my faith journey, that I have a really hard time saying no to people, to just about anything. And so what I've had to learn, and what this verse is telling me, and I hope it's telling you, is that in your faith journey, there are some things that you should say no to. Even good things, really healthy things. But when you say no to those things, it allows you to focus on the things that will bear the most fruit. And so as you engage your faith journey this week, think about two things. One, what are the things in your life that aren't bearing fruit? The things that are just kind of there and they're preventing you from experiencing all that God has for you. And then 2, is there anything in your life that you could quit? Anything that you could say no to, even something good, so that you prune all of the things in your life so you could have even more yield. Bob Goff is famous for saying, quit something every week. And I would encourage you this week to think through what are the things in your life, even good things, that you could cut out so that you could be more focused, more present, and experience more of what God wants for you in this life.